Joy, and welcome to my studio. Thank you so much for purchasing one of our Miriam Joy's classes. We really greatly appreciate it, and that helps continue to bring more of these to you. Today we're working on our crocheted ruffle beaded rim, and this is a lot of fun and just really classes up any ordinary gourd. And as you can see, you don't have to have a design, or you can put a beautiful design on it if you wish, something that's going to highlight. This is a fun class, so let's just get started. The first thing we want to do is prep our gourd, and you want a round gourd. You could use the bottom of a bottle gourd, a martin gourd, a bushel gourd, basketball gourd, anything you wanted to. The one thing I wanted to kind of show you, this guy was cut up higher and you would not have that much workable area, so I would come back in and cut this guy lower so that you have quite a bit of workable rim. So that's kind of important when you're cutting it. Cut it, clean it out, spray varnish it with black spray paint. This is the cheapest. I think I paid 94 cents, 98 cents for it at Walmart. Just spray paint the inside. Once you're done with that, we're going to come back and put black acrylic paint on the rim. Don't ever try to do that with the spray paint. It just goes all over the place. And I didn't worry about my lines being quite as clean because we're going to use a darker color here. And we're going to get all that done and let that dry. And then once you get that done, we're going to start marking off our holes. We're going to be using our new number 2 flexi, and this is a 1/2 inch flexi that is a lot more flexible because it's not quite as thick as our previous one. This one is a yard. We also do have a foot one that we call our number 3. So they're really great when working the rim. We're going to do a 1/2 inch down, so we're just going to lay the ruler right up next to the rim, and I'm going to mark 1/2 inch increments, and I'm just going to keep moving my flexi and adjusting it right to the rim as I'm working around. And I'm using my white charcoal pencil. Both the flexi and the pencil can be on my website at miriamjoy.com, and just going to work this all the way around. Once you get measured it all the way around, we'll talk about drilling the holes. Go all the way around, and you may have to adjust the last one a little bit. You have to make it a little wider, a little shorter. That turned out pretty good. So we're all done with that, and we're going to drill our holes in our gourd, and the size of bit you use is going to kind of depend on your crochet hook. And for this project, we're going to be using size number 5, and with the 5, crochet thread. And I'm going to be using a variegated one just because I want to see how it does. You could use white like I did in the other one, and we'll talk about preparing that one as well. And it says for this one, use a US 6. So this is a 6, but a D. A 6 is a D. So we wanted to make sure that your crochet hook fits through the hole. So that's real important. So you've got to know what size thread you want to use, what size hook you need, and the thread to comfortably go through on the hook. And you don't have to have the middle part here. Just this top part right here. Go through the hole. So sometimes they're wider up here. You could have one with this special handle on it or anything like that. So any hook that fits through, but remember we're also going to pull it through 3 times. So the hole has to have enough room for 3 of the threads to go through and the crochet hook. So just kind of nice and comfortable. On the first one I did, my thread is actually a little bit bigger than what we're going to be using today. So you can do it bigger. You could even try it with a smaller yarn. That's kind of just up to you and what you would like to use. So I really like the variegated, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But we're going to go ahead and get our holes drilled. And because I'm using the 532 drill bit. I'm going to use my bigger drill, and I'm probably going to get some help here in a minute. And then instead of my small ones, because my bit's a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to start drilling these holes. And just follow them all the way down. My bits are starting to get a little bit dull because I've been using them quite a bit. So remember that. You may need to get a new drill bit. I'm going to do them all the way around, and then we'll talk about coloring it. I've drilled all of my holes, and I kind of cleaned it up and spray painted back over some of those areas because this is a bigger hole than we're normally doing, and it takes a little bit of meat out of the back, so you may need to touch that up and just kind of clean that up. Now, in case you didn't notice, I was using a wood drill bit. It's got a little point on it, which is really, really nice because when you're working with a gourd, and gourd is basically a wood, you can stick that point in. As you can see, it's staying in. It's not sliding around like you're used to, and it'll keep your place, and then you can just start drilling. So that's kind of a good thing to know and to help you when you're drilling your hole. For this project, I do not recommend using a bead reamer because you've got to have too big of holes for that. So that is something I would not do. Also, when you're drilling and doing that and you've got your gourd flying, wear your mask, wear your protective gear. I have problems with allergies, so I put even cotton balls in my ears so my ears don't get sore. So if you ever get sore ears when you're drilling or working on your gourd, make sure you do that. For this gourd, I'm going to do something a little bit different. We'll talk about this guy in a little bit. I'm going to use my Bombay India inks, and these are by Dr. P.H. Martin's. And I'll show you some small ones, but they have sample packs of 12, and that's enough. You don't need a big one like this unless you use it all the time. And this is a dark purple, and I love the glossiness this gives. We just have to do quite a few layers on it, at least 3 or more. So I'm going to start and use my gloves and my cotton rounds to put my ink on with. I like this color because it's almost black. A lot of people think it's black, but when you get in the sunshine, it is got the purple with it. And start in the bottom like we always do all of our gourds. I sanded this guy just a little bit, kind of to get the blemishes off of him and just to sand them a little bit. You don't necessarily need to sand them. I haven't noticed with the Bombay, the Dr. Martens, that you need to for the color to absorb as well. I'm sure if you had it sanded really well, it would absorb better. But you don't necessarily need it. Let it dry completely, because when you have a wet area and you start to go back over it, you're going to kind of pick that color up, and you can see how blotchy it looks right now. Got a little bit of a hiney going on there. Don't tell anybody. And it's got a very unusual smell to it. I've got to figure out what it smells like. There's something it smells like. Now, I'm not going to worry about getting the colors in the whole of my gourd because the ruffles are going to cover up those really well. So don't worry about that. And if it's a warmer day, you may be dry enough that you can start again from the bottom. If not, let it dry. You start to pick up any of the color. You don't want to do that. Let it dry because it's harder to go back over after that time. But you can see how much richer it already is. Oh, see, I picked up some of the color there. That's what I'm kind of talking about that.
So it's best that I let it dry really good in between the coats, because you don't want to do that. That's not good. I'll just keep picking that up if I go over that. So it's better to let it dry in between the coats really, really well, and just keep doing those. So do 3 coats, and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, I put my layers on, and see how that turned to a nice even coat. See how shiny and wonderful that is? And I forgot to say, this is violet, by the way, but this nice dark purple that you get. And like I said, if you want to put a couple extra coats on, you can. It didn't take much ink. I think I only loaded it twice. The ink just seems to really stay in the cotton round and just keep going over and over it and over it. And you can also use your embossing gun to dry in between layers. That's fine. Now this one, I wanted to just do a simple design that will just accent the rim. So I'm going to use my Inka Golds, and this is one of my new favorite things. And they're made for stamp booking or cards or paper, and they're a wax-based product, so that's probably why I like it. Now you've got to be real careful. They dry out real quick, so as soon as you use them, cover them back up, and it only takes a tiny bit. But to use this, I decided that I was going to take colors that accented the thread that I was going to use. So I picked out a purple and a green, and then also a old silver, that is. And the best way to look for these, you can look for them at your craft store. I found mine at Joann's, but you don't always find these. You can just go on the internet and look for them. That's probably the best thing to do. So I'm going to start out with my lighter color. And for this technique, I'm going to use my texture brush. If you're not familiar with it, this is a Miriam Joy product. I'm going to pounce that just to make sure I don't have anything in it. And I'm going to start at the bottom of this, and we're just going to do some simple cross hatching. And I don't want too much, but I want enough that it's going to show. And I want to do 3 colors. So I want to make sure that I have enough for all 3. Just real light, real simple. Make sure you have some top, bottom, middle. Now I'm going to see if we need to go over these just a little bit more. And I just don't want this color quite as bright. To me, this kind of acts as like oil paint sticks, only you don't want to put them on the gourd real solid with a solid coat, because they will chip off. But they almost maybe look like embossing powders when they're put on light. A lot of times I will just take my finger and rub them on, and I'll show you what I mean. But you hardly need any. It's just a real, that is even too much right there, just a little tiny bit, and then you can just rub your color on just like that. So that's really, you know, fun and easy to use. So I'm going to take that guy off because I don't want him there. And I'm just going to take my baby wipe and kind of clean this guy, and that's why I started with the lighter color. And we're going to do this one. Now you can see this guy showing up more. But I just want something that's just going to help accent my rim, not take away from it. So we've got our green on. Bugs are flying at me here. And this is jade, or jade green on that one. And wipe my brush, and then I'm going to use violet. Big difference between this violet and that violet, isn't there? This is kind of a darker purple. And sometimes this will dry a little bit on top, and you might have to go underneath it a little bit to get the more moist part. And that's why as soon as you're done using these, put the lid back on them. Don't even wait, you know, in between sometimes when you're working on them. We're working on this one pretty fast. Another thing you could do, instead of the cross hatching, doing it back and forth, you could do swirls. And that's really fun. And all you do is just take your brush and swirl it, and you'll get a swirl instead of a cross hatch. That's it. But see, it's just to give it a little bit of something, just so it's not quite so plain. Not anything real big. Now, I didn't do it up here as much. You'll notice that's all going to be covered up by the ruffle. I'm not really worried about that. So go ahead and get that done. And then what we're going to do after that is we're going to go ahead and varnish it. You could use any type of varnish that you want. It could be brush on. It could be spray on, just whatever you are comfortable. I would go ahead and make sure your inside's nice and clean. If you need to touch it up, and go ahead and at least spray varnish on that inside a little bit as well, and just make that nice and clean. And then we'll get started on our ruffle. Now that you're all done with your texture brush, just take it and wash it out with warm water and soap and let that dry, and that will clean that guy right up, and he'll be ready to go for the next time. If you wanted to do the black and white fern design on the gourd, I did 2 base coats of black acrylic paint. It can be any type of black acrylic paint. And then I did a varnish over it, and then did the rim, and then put my wax design in, and I kind of just did a fern little wax design, and then you varnish over the top of that. You could either do brush on, you could brush it up if you have enough room to go up there, or you can tape the top off and just spray varnish it or brush varnish it from there on down, and that gets covered up anyway, so you don't have to really worry about that. Okay, so again, we're going to talk about our thread, and this is crochet thread, and this is size 5, and I picked this multicolor one up at the Walmart in the craft section. You could probably find it at your craft stores in the yarn section, no big deal. And we talked about our size of our crochet hook, and this is a D, and I picked it up there as well. But whatever size you end up using, go with what size it tells you. So this said that it needed a US 6, and so that's what I picked up as a hook that went with my thread. Now if you were using a small yarn instead of thread, you know, you'd have to adjust your holes to make sure that you could go through it and everything, and you probably would want to space the holes bigger across as well. So that's something to think about as you're working on that. And we're also going to be putting beads onto it, and I think the beads are really what sets it off. And we're going to be using glass E beads, and we need to make sure that our beads are big enough to put onto our thread. And we're going to use size 60, so they've got the larger hole inside. I did also pick these up at Walmart. You could pick them up at the craft store, any beading store, but if you change to a larger size thread, you need to think about different size beads. So that's another thing to just kind of think about and prepare for. All right, let's get started. So we're going to take our crochet thread and we'll stick it through the hole, and we're just going to do a double knot on it. We're going to tie it once and tie it twice. And I didn't tie it, it's pretty tight, but it's loose enough that I can get my crochet thread underneath it. And then we want to leave a little bit of a tail because we're going to crochet over that as we're working, or if you don't crochet over it, you can just weave it back in later. So either of those is fine. So we're going to put our crochet, we're going to grab our thread, and we're going to do a slip stitch, pull it through that hole or loop, and then we're going to do that again 2 times. So 2, we chained 2. So we have 2 stitches there, and that's going to create our first stitch, what we're going to consider our first stitch in this hole. So we're going to wrap our thread around our hook. We're going to go into the hole, and we're going to grab the crochet thread from the back with our hook and pull it back through. We're going to bring that up towards the top, and see how we've kind of tightened it all up, but we brought it towards the top. We didn't leave it at the bottom, so that we can grab our thread again. And we're going to grab our thread with our hook, and we're going to pull it through 1, 2 of the loops, and bring that out, and grab our thread and pull it through 2 more of the loops, which is a double crochet. And that is our second stitch. Now, if it kind of doesn't lay straight, move this guy around a little bit so that we've got him laying down nice and neat. So we're going to do this again. Double crochet through the hole. We're going to pick up our thread, go through the hole, pick up our thread from the back with our hook, pull it back through the hole, and pull it up to the top. You have 3 loops on your hook. So we're going to grab our thread, pull it through the first 2 loops only, and grab our thread and pull it through the second 2 loops. Now that is going to form our third double crochet. So we're not going to do anything in between these 2 holes. We're just going to go into the second hole after we do our third double crochet. So we pick up our thread, go through the hole, pick up our thread there, and bring it back through the hole, and bring it up to the top. And I gotta situate these a little bit. We're going to pull it through the first 2 loops and grab our thread and pull it through the second 2 loops. So every stitch that you do is going to have 2 strands, not one like you normally have on a crochet hook, okay? Or on a crochet stitch. So we're going to go through the hole again, grab our thread in the back, bring it up to the top, grab our thread, go through 2 of the loops, grab our thread, and go through 2 more of the loops to form our second double crochet. So again, we're going to pick up the thread, go through the hole, pick up the thread in the back, and bring it back to the top. Sometimes you have to pull it a little bit. That's okay. We're going to pick up our thread, and we're going to pull it through the first 2 loops, and pick up our thread and pull it through the second 2 loops. Okay, so when you're done, you have a total of 6 thread coming in this hole. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And after you get them done, you can straighten them out a little bit better. And it's hard for me to keep them tighter when I'm showing you. I can keep it tighter when I'm not showing you as easy. So we're going to do this one more time, and then I'm going to let you go all the way around. We're going to grab our thread, just bring it over the top like that, go through, grab our thread, grab it this way or you end up with another loop. So grab it from the front going to the back. And I'm sure you people that crochet know better than I do. I crochet a lot, but I've never crocheted by patterns. So we're going to bring it through the first 2 loops and the second 2 loops to form our first double crochet in that hole. We picked up our thread. We're going to pick up our thread again in the back, We're going to pull it through, move it to the top, pick up our thread. So you should always be picking up the thread this direction, even when it's in the back. Otherwise, you kind of end up with an extra loop on your hook. So pull it through those 2 loops and those 2 loops. Again, pick up the thread, go to the back, and see, this is where it seems like you want to go this way, but you're actually picking up the thread like that. And again, just like that, pick up the thread, pull it through the 2 loops, and pull it through the 2 loops. And again, we have 6 of our little we have 6 little strands coming down, and those should probably be a little bit tighter. If you do them loose, just keep consistent. There's no right or wrong with that. And like I said, if you're a crochet person, you're just doing 3 double crochets in each of the hole, and that's simple for you, and you understand that. If you are not quite as knowledgeable about the crochet stitches, there's a lot of YouTubes, like I said, that you can look up that will help you with those, but hopefully that's giving you a little bit more idea. If you have any problems, let me know. I also have some individual pictures and some walk me through instructions that may help you as well. So we're going to go around all the way until we get to you even can do it in this last hole right here, and then we'll get started on our second row. Alright, we've gone all the way around, and when you're doing these should be, when you finish the hoop and go to the next hole, these should be right next to each other. There shouldn't be a bunch of space between them. They should be lining up right next to each other. So if you have space between them where they're pulling a little bit, you may need to add another stitch, but they should be nice up against that. You can see this one is looser and this one's a little bit tighter. If you wanted it tighter, you could use a little smaller hook, and the people that have crocheted a while, it'd be easier for them to make it tighter, but there's no right or wrong on that. We've just got the nice and tight. Now I want to show you the inside of this one because it's tighter and it's easier to see how nice and clean that looks. And we've laid all of our string or thread down, and what I mean by that is we've gone and we've fixed it all. We want to make sure that these aren't crossed over on the inside as well as the outside. So you want those all nice and straight and not crossed over. So now that we've done that, we've done in our last hole, we're coming up to our very first stitch. That's where we added the 2, remember? So we're going to find that first one. Here's 1, 2. So it's this guy right here. And you can tell because it belongs with this strand, not these 2 right here, which would be the second stitch. So we're going to put our crochet hook in, and we're going to pull it through that, and also our first one that we have on our hook. If I can get it here. Alright. And we're going to chain 3. That's going to be our first stitch. 1, 2, 3. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to do a double crochet in each of these double crochets below. So wherever there's 2 of these, that is considered the top of the stitch, and we're going to go into each one of those 3 times. So you're picking up both the front and the back of that top stitch. So this one is our first stitch, and we're going to do double crochet again, but we're not going through our gourd this time. So we're picking up our thread, going into the hole, picking up our thread and pulling it back through, just like we would have done the rim part. And then you pick up your thread, you go through 2 of the loops on your hook. Get that last one here. Okay, and then you have 2 left, and you pick up your thread and you pull those 2 through. So again, you're going to pick up your thread, go into that hole for the 3rd stitch, pick up your thread, pull it up, and we're going to pick up our thread again and go through the 2 hooks and 2 loops, excuse me, and 2 loops. So that's a double crochet. Again, pick up our thread, go into the top of the next stitch, and we're going to pick up our thread and pull it up. And here would be like we were on top. We're going to pick up our thread, go through the first 2 loops and the second 2 loops. So one more time, pick up our thread, go into the hole, pick up our thread, come back out, pick up our thread, go through 2, pick up our thread and go through 2. So we're going to do one more for 3 double crochets here. And that's what those are, is just double crochets, and you're doing them the tops of the double crochets below. So we're going to go ahead and do these all the way around the top of our rim. And when I stop and think about it, I mess it up. Or when I slow down, I'm just so used to doing them, and I'm not quite as comfortable working with a smaller needle. But that first row that you did is by far the hardest. So know that, and from here on out it's going to be a lot easier. But on this row we're actually creating the ruffle, so that it's going to, you're going to notice that you're going to start to get a lot of build up in the it's going to start to get tight and kind of bind up, and that's what's creating the ruffle. So that is okay as we work our way around. So this is our build-up row of actually our ruffle. So as you can see in this one, we have 3 in each of those tops of the double crochet on the bottom. And so let's go ahead and go all the way around the rim, and then we'll meet up and talk about the next layer. All right, we've gone all the way around when we're really starting to see this ruffle really come to life. Now this ruffle's kind of made to go up and down on just the side, not back and forth so much if you wanted it bigger like that. If you wanted it bigger and thicker, then do 4 or 5 double crochets in each thing. Then you wouldn't do the beading up here on the rim. That would be the one thing you would have to give up, because that would be going back and forth. But if you like that look better, then all you would have to do is about 4 or 5 of those. So we're going to meet up our last stitch and our first stitch, and all we're going to do again is this first stitch, find the top one, put your hook through it, pick up your thread and pull it through all of those loops till you have just the original one that you just picked up. And easier said than done sometimes. I'm having a tough time getting through that last one, getting caught up on something here. I guess we've kind of turned it or something. Try one more time. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to do our chain 3. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and that starts your next stitch. So now we're only going to do 1 double crochet in the double crochet below it. So again, any of these that have the 2 across, you're going to go into each one of those 1 time. So this first one we've already done. So we're going into our second one. And again, we're doing our double crochet, and by now I shouldn't tell you how to do the double crochet. You should have a pretty good idea how to do that. And we're going to do a double crochet in each one of those. See, these are giving it the height, and it's going to even add more to that ruffle here. So we're coming along here. And we're just going to go, again, all the way around, just like we did the last time, until we meet up with our first stitch on the row. we've gone all the way around that last row, and we're getting ready to join up, and as you can see, we're getting this real pretty ruffle. And I really like the variegated purple and green thread with the gourd, and I'm glad we really kept the gourd simple. I think you have so much going on up here that your main focus is there. So let's take the last one we've done. On the first stitch here, we're going to put it in the very top, grab your thread and pull it through both of those, and then we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're actually going to thread our beads, so we've got to pull a lot of our thread off, as much as you're comfortable pulling off, and because we've got to string our beads. And if you don't have enough, you can always tie it on. It's not a big deal, but we want quite a bit of thread so you're not stopping and tying and tucking that in. And it's better if you can do it all in one thing. It's probably better to have a little bit too much than not quite as much. So I'm hoping, I know it's going to take a bit, but I'm hoping that's going to be good there. So I've got quite a bit of thread. Hopefully I didn't get it too bunched up. And I'm going to use an embroidery needle because it's small enough with a big enough needle that I can get my beads onto all the way down. And string as many beads as you're comfortable doing. I'm not going to tell you amount because every time you do it, it's going to be different. Of course, the first bead I put on here gets stuck. Some holes can be a little bit smaller than others, and that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put this whole pile of beads onto my thread, and give me a couple minutes just to work through that, and then we'll come right back. I put several of these on my my thread, and you're probably going to have to do a bunch of these. This won't be the only time that you do it, but if you wanted to spool it, now you're going to have to unspool it to put the thread or the beads back on, so know that as well. So, because you have to move the beads forward, and that's why I'm not putting a whole bunch on, because I've still got to move these as I'm going. And that's why I didn't put on a whole bunch, is because I've still got to move these. We've got to still keep this untangled and move these up. So I am going to try and spool this, move these up, and get started here in just a little bit. That's moving really good. If you can kind of keep these laid down straight as you're going, it's not quite so bad. So I'm going to get up to the rim, and we'll take it from there. To wrap my crochet thread around, I just used a spool. This one happens to be from my ribbon because it's kind of got the edges so it doesn't slide off. But you could use anything. If you didn't even have anything, you could use a toilet paper roll. So that's not a big deal. So we've got this up here now. And what we're going to do is we've anchored there. So we're going to chain 3, but we're going to put our bead in the second one. So chain 1. And we're going to move a bead down. And I usually have a couple beads kind of working up here. So we're going to put that bead right there. So it's going to go in the middle of our second chain. And then we're going to do our third chain. And a chain is just pulling it through that loop again. So then we're going to go into every other top of the double crochet. And remember we talked about where there's 2, right straight across from the sets of top. So there's one there and there's one there. So we're skipping one and going in the next one. And we're going to do kind of a slip stitch through that. So you have that little kind of loop there. So again, chain 1, bring your bead down, just keep on chaining, just don't even pretend it's there. And then chain 3, and then we skip one, and then we go into the next one. We pull it straight through, we bring it through the top part of the double crochet, and also our last loop for that slip stitch. And we chain 1, and if I have these up here a few at a time, it kind of gets easier where I kind of just have them loaded and waiting to go. Put the bead on and chain another one and go in the second hole, every other top of the double crochet. Pull those through in a slip stitch, chain one, and we're going to put our bead in with our second one. We're not doing any more right there. Chain three, go in our second one, pull it through both of those loops, chain one, chain two with the bead, chain three, go into our second one. So we're just doing this all the way around now. This gives it that real frilly, fun look. This just is what really sets this off, and I think this is what makes this so unique and really draws you to it. So we're going to go around all of the edges of the ruffles that we have done, doing the exact same thing. You're going to chain three, you're going to put the bead in that second chain, and you're going to go through every other top of the double crochet. So every other one, do a slip stitch and then chain three. And we'll meet you on the other side. We've done our beads all the way around, and I had to add 2 links of beads about that big. So if you wanted to put them all in one time, try to, that's fine too. And then I had just a couple at the very end I had to come back and do. But doesn't that totally change the look of the ruffle? I just think that really adds to it. So we're right to our last one. So we're going to finish him up. I'm going to do my chain one, bring my bead down, chain two, chain three, and I'm going to anchor it off right here and right where we started. And so I put my hook through, I grab the thread, pull it through both of those loops, and then I'm going to cut my thread, a little bit of a tail, and I'm going to pull through my loop one more time to make it into a knot, and then we're just going to tuck that tail in. I did pretty good with my thread. I had a little bit left over, and I'd rather have a little bit left over than have to tie onto a knot. And if you did, that's okay, just tuck it in, it's not a big deal. So in this guy, because we've got green, I'm just going to go back into the green areas, and I think I'm going back in this row right here, not what we just did. So I'm going to just go in and out and in and out and in and out, and I'm going to pull this through, just hook it around the hook and pull it through, and whatever we have hanging out we're going to cut off, and that way the green's tucked in with the green, especially when we put it down there, it's all tucked away, so it's good. Now we're going to go ahead and do our beads up on top. Now on these beads, these were black iridescent, and I really like these even better than just the black. I think they were just really pretty. You could even do the iridescent with the purple, and that would be just as pretty. There's so many colors that the iridescent picks up, the pink, the purple, the blue, the green, so you know. So I measured this off, and I've got more than enough. I used probably about a yard of my thread. And we're going to go into, this is actually the first double crochets that we did, where you see the space, it almost looks like a little circle. We're going to go in every other one of those. So you can start anywhere. I'm going to start where I stopped on my other part. And I'm just sticking it up in the top of one of those, right in the middle of the very first double crochets we did. And I'm going to leave a tail, and because that we can tie off to. So we're going to thread our needle, and we're going to go down the next double crochet top and come out the top of the next one, and we're going to put on our bead. And we're going to do the same thing. Pull that all the way down. And I'm not pulling this tight because I don't have it knotted. If you wanted to make a bigger knot, you can. I just want to tie around when I'm done at the end. So I'm going down the next one, and then I'm coming right back up that next one next to it. And these are the top of the double crochets. So every other one is getting a bead. But you're going either down or up every single double crochet on that very first row. So we're going to go, we're in this one, so we're going to go down this one, and we're going to come out this one. So we're going to put on our bead and go down this double crochet and come out this double crochet. So again, just real simple. We're going to go all the way around, and I'm not pulling. It's nice and secure. Once you get going, that's not going to move any on you, and we're just going to take those all the way around. This just kind of cleans up our rim a little bit and just even adds to the bead look. You wouldn't have to do it if you don't want to. In fact, you wouldn't have to do any of the beads if you didn't want to. The beads do make the ruffle a little bit heavier. So if you wanted to keep your ruffle a little bit more stiff, you wouldn't have to add the beads if you didn't want to. Another thing you could also do is you could put stiffener on it. And I'd probably put the stiffener on before I would put the beads if you still wanted to add the beads. And that would keep it in shape. That would totally be up to you. But you can see there's still enough stiffness in it. And I love the beads and the elegance that it brings to it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish all the way around, and then we will show you how to tie that off. I'm working my way around, but I want to talk to you a little bit. See these little guys right here, these bigger loops? On my previous ones, this was tighter and I was able to go in and out here. But because my beads are smaller and this is looser, I can't do that. So that's why we're moving down here. But if this is tighter, or if your beads are bigger, they won't slip in and out, you can go in that row right here. But instead I'm having to go up a little bit higher, but those are more even. So that gives you something to work with or think about. And I also notice when I was beading, I'm pulling this down. So make sure you pull that all back up. See how we've got it down here? It's kind of sliding down. So when we're done, we're going to pull that all back up too. So this should be sitting just on that top of that rim. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that all the way around. Okay, we've gone all the way around with our beads, and I'm going to do one last one there because I think it just needs it. And to bring it together, we'll take a look at it, see if it does. And that's what I have left on my thread. And I'm glad I didn't do it any shorter because I still liked working with a little bit longer amount. And you'd rather have more to tie your tails and everything in with. So this was our little tail that we did when we first started. I'm going to come and put him back in here because I think he shows too much there. So we've got our beginning and our end tail. Make sure you've pulled them tight enough but not too tight that they have wiggle room. And we're just going to do a double knot and tie it off. Again, we're going to make sure I didn't pull that guy too tight there. And okay, so I'm going to do a little bit longer tail. I won't weave all of that probably back in. This is the beads I had left. Not quite a half, maybe almost a half for that little guy, that little gourd. That kind of gives you an idea on how many beads that took. I switched to a little bit smaller needle, which was, I originally didn't have an embroidery needle, so I did switch to the embroidery needle. And then I got them all through the hole. It was a little bit tighter getting the thread through, but that was fine. So we've got to tuck these guys all in, and you may decide that you want to tuck them in like through here underneath the beads or up here, wherever you think that they're going to hide the best. Being variegated color, it's a little bit trickier to hide them because they are a little bit if they're not that color, they're going to show up a little bit more. If you're doing a solid color, it's a little bit easier. So that's going to kind of be your dilemma with the variegated. So maybe more along the bottom right here, where they're not going to quite show up as much. I'm going to do like that, just where the beads are. Hopefully the beads will help cover them up as well. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just tucking them in. And get those. You may have to do them at one at a time if you can't get them both in. I'm going to try and get them both in here. We'll see how that goes. Okay, let's see how that looks from the top. And this was that guy I was talking about. I'm going to have to come and hide him a little bit better there. But just play with those until you get them into a section that you think hides them really, really well. And then just cut your tails off. So that's going to kind of be a personal opinion where you think you can hide those. And remember, we talked about moving this all back up. My other one was tighter and I never had that problem. And then once we're all done here, just take your finger and kind of put it into little twist here all the way around your ruffles and get that all nice and done. And that is just about the end of it. Isn't it really fun how the different color from the white is? And like I said, I'm really glad we kept this simple because we've got so much going on here. You could even come back and do some beads on the inside, put them wherever you wanted them, in the middle of the ruffles. You could get crazy with this, or you could do it without the beads. That's just our personal preference, whatever you like. I always tell you to take what I've taught you and build on it. I'd love to see what you come up with. Another thing that you could do if you wanted to keep the tails from popping in and out, maybe if you're going to competition or you're going to sell it, is take your super glue, crazy glue, one of those, and just barely put a tip on there or a dot of glue, and then just glue it down and just cut the tip off, and then you wouldn't have to worry about that coming in or out anymore. The same with down here. The crazy glue is fine. It's got the nice sharp point, but if you get the smaller ones, I've even found like a 4-pack at Dollar Tree, you can put them on with your needle. Put the glue down, put it on the needle, and then put it on. Just be careful, don't glue your fingers together. We've all heard that story 100 times. And then after it dries, just remove it from your needle. So that's kind of an idea to help you keep those tails in.
Well, I hope you had as much fun with this video as I did. It turned out to be a really fun project. And first of all, I wanted to say thank you for being such a loyal supporter of Miriam Joy. If there's ever any projects you need, come on over to our website at miriamjoy.com and make sure you check out the class DVDs, where we're going to continue to bring you more of these wonderful classes as we get them done. Also check out the YouTubes. We've got lots and lots of those for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. God bless.